Good afternoon. Welcome to this seminar. The program of this seminar is actually moving towards carbon neutrality, use of the Greater Bay Area. Actually, this program is to promote youth to know and understand more about carbon neutrality and to enhance connection among youth in the Greater Bay Area. The program is organized by Hong Kong Lanching Charity, and I'm the director, Mabel Mack, of the Lanching Charity, plus other organizations, NGOs in the Shenzhen government and in Macau. The program is also supported by the Hong Kong Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Bureau, Tsinghua University, and the Ministry of Biodiversity and Environment is the leading authority. Today is the first day we have the program in English to conduct the program in carbon audit. And we have invited speaker, Ms. Erica Fong from Hong Kong Productivity Council to be our speaker today. Well, it is the first time that we cast carbon audit and do this kind of Zoom education workshop. So please don't find it too difficult, but we will later circulate the video to all schools. Now, may I pass this to Ms. Erica Fong? Thank you, Erica.
Thank you, Mabel. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, very clearly. Thank you, Erica.
Thanks again, Mabel, for inviting me to share on the topic on carbon auditing. It's my great honor. I'm Erica from HKPC. I'm now working in the carbon and ESG solution team. I have been working on carbon related field for over 2 years. And before that, I was working on green building engineering. So let's start my sharing today. So today, my sharing topic will be the road to carbon neutrality, assessing carbon footprint with carbon auditing. I will be covering 4 major topics. The first part of my sharing will be a background of the carbon audit, and then I will go through the carbon auditing steps and the carbon auditing in detail. Last but not least, I will share how to bring carbon into classrooms so that we can better engage our students. So for the background of carbon audit, actually, there are arousing noise about carbon recently. It is majorly because on the policy address announced in 2020 that Hong Kong would strive to achieve carbon neutrality before 2050. And the government would like to set out more proactive strategies and measures to reduce carbon emissions among the city. And actually, the carbon action plan in 2015, it has bring out 4 major decarbonization strategies, including some net zero electricity generation, energy saving and green buildings, green transport, and waste reduction. Actually, why we are majorly focused on building is because it is found that there are over 60% of electricity generations are from, 66% of the carbon emissions are from electricity generations, and among them, there are over 90% are from buildings. So it is very important to reduce carbon in buildings so that we can help the city to achieve carbon neutrality. According to the EMSD and EPD, they have set out some basic concept of carbon audit. Actually, carbon audit, sometimes it may refer to carbon footprint, is the means to measure and record the greenhouse gas emissions of an organization or an institution within a defined system boundary. And when we talk about carbon neutrality, there are 6 major steps. And the first one is to commit, to measure, the gap analysis, to set some target, to take actions, and to disclose. Actually, the first step is to allow the top management to commit the organization for achieving carbon neutrality. And the second step is to measure the carbon footprint of the organization. And the third one is to analyze the gap and bridge between the gap and the commitment. And then among the measures that we have set out, we can set some goals and time frame on achieving carbon neutrality. And then we can take some action to reduce the emissions and offset it maybe in phases. And then finally, we can communicate with our stakeholders like the parents or the students on the carbon performance of the school. Actually, there are different standards from the international, but I'm not going detailed in this sharing. And today, I'm majorly focused on the step 2 of our carbon neutrality roadmap, which is the carbon footprint. Actually, I think we all know that the greenhouse gases exist in the atmosphere originally, and it may be emitted by the transportation or some like the agricultural activities. But actually, since the industrialization, there are more human activities and more greenhouse gases were emitted, which may cause some trap and of heat within the atmosphere. And the greenhouse gases are majorly categorized into 3 scopes. But the scope 1 is direct emissions, scope 2 is energy-related indirect greenhouse gas emission, and the scope 3 is other indirect emission. And we will cover it in detail in later parts. So carbon footprint usually are used as an indicator of carbon emission. It is to measure the impact of environment due to human activities, including scope 1 to scope 3. And it is usually expressed as carbon dioxide equivalent. We usually say CO2e. And it is a measure to compare and sum the impact from various greenhouse gases based upon their GWP. GWP is referring to global warming potential. Because different greenhouse gases may have different effects on the Earth warming, it is developed to allow comparisons of the global warming impacts of different gases. When you get a larger GWP, we have more given gas warms the oil compared to CO2 over the time period. Usually, among those greenhouse gases we have shared, we usually focus on three big major gases: the CO2, CH4, which is methane, and the N2O, nitrous oxide. The CO2 can be emitted by burning fossil fuels like coal or natural gas or solid waste or trees. Also, it can be removed by the atmosphere when it is absorbed by plants and as part of the biological carbon cycle. And for methane, it is emitted during the production and transportation of some fossil fuels like coal or natural gas. And also, it can also be emitted by the agricultural practice. And for the N2O, it is emitted during some industrial activities and agricultural activities as well. And when we calculate the carbon footprint, it is an example here. When we have activities that emit CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide at the same time, we can calculate the CO2e by multiplying the amount of the gases by the GWP, so that we can sum up the emissions to get the total CO2e so that we can know the carbon footprint of the specific activities. So when we come to the steps of the carbon audit, actually, we usually refer to some guidelines. Here is a guideline published by EMSD and the EPD. They have some detailed steps on the carbon auditing and have shown some reference like the emission factors or some detailed equation that I will go through in later parts. And in carbon audit, there are 5 very important principles and that we have to bear in mind. The first one is the relevance. Whether we should ensure that the boundaries, the information and data are selected for compiling the greenhouse gases inventory, that they can be appropriately reflect the greenhouse gas emission status of the building concerned and serve the needs of the internal and external users, like within the school or to disclose. And the second one is completeness. Whether the carbon audit can account for and report all greenhouse gases emission and removals within the chosen physical and operational boundaries. Some specific exclusions should be disclosed and justified. The third major part is about consistency. The reporting entity should consistently adopt a consistent methodologies so that they can relate to some information, including the trends of the emission over the time, or are there any changes to the boundary information or data that we should keep the whole practice consistent. And the fourth one is accuracy. We should always ensure that there are no bias or uncertainties in quantifying the greenhouse gases emission. And it is to minimize, these should be minimized as far as possible. And the last one is transparency. We should always disclose sufficient and appropriate information, including some assumptions or reference to allow the readers or the users to of the report to understand it with a reasonable confidence. So the carbon audit usually include 5 major steps. The first one is we need to define the physical and operational boundaries, and then we can identify some emission source from the boundary, and then we will come to the data collection part that we can know some data of each activities. And then we can apply the emission factors for the calculations based on the data we collected. And then finally, we can report and disclose the results to the concerned stakeholders. But it is very important to always keep it reviewed regularly. And I'm going to, because during the later training sessions for students, we will show wider picture of carbon audit. But for today, we will focus on the technical part of the carbon audit so that you can better understand the mechanism to help the students to know more about carbon audit more easily. In scope 1, it is referred to direct emissions, greenhouse gases emissions. It is usually come from 4 parts. The first one is from stationary combustions. And the second one is the mobile combustion source. And then we always get it from some fugitive emissions and greenhouse gas removals from newly planted trees. And the trees have to be grown more than 5 meters. And I will go through it one by one. Some generic stationary combustion source at school we can always see is include gas cooking stoves or Bunsen burners, etc. Actually, based on the fuel type and the amount consumed, we can calculate the emission of the greenhouse gases, excuse me, by multiplying the amount of the fuel used and multiplying it by the emission factor I list on the table. Actually, different fuel types have different emission factors on the greenhouse gases, and we can easily get the emission by multiplying them. And another scope 1 source that we usually come over is about the mobile combustion source. It is, for example, the road transports or the school buses. It is similar to the stationary source that we can simply multiply the fuel amount with the emission factor to get the emissions from this scope. And also, the third one is the fugitive emission. It includes some air conditioning or refrigerating system or some fire extinguishers. The equation may look a bit more complicated, but the basis is similar. It is only to calculate how many refrigerants that we consumed, and then we can multiplying the amounts with the emission factor to get the emission of greenhouse gases. The fourth one is the greenhouse gas removal from newly planted trees that can reach at least 5 meters tall per year. The CO2 removal, the calculation is the number of additional trees planted multiplying by the removal factor. And according to the guideline that I have mentioned earlier, the removal factor is 23 kg per tree. So I know the principle may seem complicated, so I would like to share an example case for you to know how the calculation works. Here is an example that we have recorded some fuel consumed by various usage and activities, include the generator, a Bunsen burner, some private fans and public light bulbs. And then we have records the refrigerants consumed. We in the school we have consumed R410A and HFC134A, and their amounts have been listed here accordingly. And the tree at the school has planted 10 trees and removed 2 trees within the reporting period. So I can leave you some time for you to think about how to work back on the scope 1 emissions. So actually, the EPD from Hong Kong has provided a standard carbon audit calculation template. We can also, sometimes when we are working, we can simply key in the data to get the results from the calculations. It is found that the scope 1 emission, it can emit 83.25 tons of CO2 equivalents. And for the scope 1 removal from the trees that we have planted, it can reduce 0.18 tons of CO2 equivalents. And the total net emission of scope 1 will be 83.07 tons of CO2 equivalents. It is always important to take note on the unit transfer, because when I show you the example, it is in kg or even in grams, but eventually we have to convert the data into tons of CO2 equivalent to better indicate the emissions. And when we come to scope 2, it refers to indirect greenhouse gas emission from power companies, which means the energy is not directly emitted from your organization, but you consume the purchased electricity or town gas. So the emission burden will be shifted to the power companies. And the emission factors may refer to the annual reports from different power companies. So maybe when your schools or organization is located on the Hong Kong island, you may refer to the emission factor from the Hong Kong Electric. Or maybe if your organization is located in Kowloon or maybe New Territories, you can refer to the emission factor from the CLP. And because the company are targeting to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, therefore they are trying on different fuel mix to attain the better performance with lower carbon emission. So the emission factor may annually update, and you can always refer to the latest emission factor from the annual reports. And the last scope of the carbon audit is scope 3. It is referring to other indirect emission. It is not mandatory, but you can consider other emission source based on your own operations. And and the guideline has shown that the two most common scope 3 emission are due to the disposal of or recycling of paper waste, or the electricity used for freshwater processing or sewage processing. The calculations are similar to the refrigerant consumption that I've mentioned before. We will calculate the paper waste that we disposed and reduce the paper that we have recycled, and then the rest will be the total amount of paper waste that we disposed to the landfill, and then we multiply by the emission factor to get the emission of carbon greenhouse gases from the paper waste disposed. And for another scope 3 emission is from the freshwater processing or sewage processing. Actually, it is only to refer the amount of water consumed, that you may refer to your water bills to get your amount that's on a regular basis, and then multiply it by an emission factor to get the greenhouse gas emission by freshwater consumed. But for the sewage processing, we have two assumptions. If your source is from restaurants or some catering service, we have to assume 70% of the freshwater is consumed by will be enter the sewage system. But if other source is used, we assume a 100% of freshwater to consume will enter to the sewage system. So here comes to another example. The example is based on the real data provided by the NLSI College in Kwun Tong. We very appreciate their output, but they have revealed that they have consumed total electricity and town gas listed, and also they have used a certain amount of paper and got some paper recycled also at the same time. And then they have assumed the freshwater to be consumed by restaurant or catering service around 30 meter cube per year, and by other purpose of 200 meter cube per year. And similarly, we can plug into the Excel that I've mentioned before. So we can get that the total scope 2 greenhouse gas emission is 193 tons CO2 equivalent, and the third scope is 21.7 tons of CO2 equivalent. We can see that actually on a normal basis, the scope 2 emission accounts for the most amount free scopes. So it is very important for us to reduce the carbon use in scope 2, like the electricity that we use or some like town gas we consumed. Okay, so here comes to the part 4 of my sharing, which is the carbon in the classroom. Actually, it is very important that we can bring the concept of carbon to the students so that they can incubate a carbon practice in their lifetime. And the first one is the carbon footprint exercise. We can ask the students few questions related to the daily habits so that they can have a rough idea on how many carbon they are emitting. And for example, we can ask like, how often do you eat red meat as main course? If you have consumption of more than once a day, we will have a higher carbon blocks that indicate your habit. Or do you have the tap running while you brush your teeth? And we can, if their answer is yes, they will always get a higher amount of water blocks. And if their answer is no, we can just know what a block will be added for this activity. So in this practice, we can compare, we can let them understand how many carbons they are emitting on the daily activities and how many waters they are consuming on the activities. So they can compare the amounts their classmates so that they can be motivated to reduce carbon. And the second part is the regular sharing on low carbon tips. Actually, it is, as I mentioned before, it is very important to lower the scope 2 carbon emission, which is related to the electricity use. So we would always like to share the low carbon tips to the students. For example, for the air conditioning in classroom, did you turn off the air conditioning at rooms while they are not in use, or did you set the AC temperature as appropriate, or do you or they can always take note that are there AC with grade 1 energy label, are they very energy efficient? And also for the lighting, we can alert them, do you turn off the lights when the rooms are not in use, or did you utilize the daylight, like opening the curtain to let sunlight penetrate into minimize the use of the electrical light? Or do you always keep your fridge closed? Or are you adopting fridge with grade 1 energy label, etc.? The third one is to implement low carbon day. It is to encourage them to go for a very low carbon lifestyle. With we may encourage them on various activities like tree planting. As I mentioned, planting tree can help us to remove some greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So it is always good to plant more trees. Also, we can adopt some low carbon menu, like with more vegetables and less meat, so that we can lower the carbon in our eating habits. Also, we can conduct some inter-class recycling competition so that to encourage the students to take more recycling practice. And then for the meal portioning, we can engage them to portion by portion. We can encourage them to get a smaller portion of meal when they require. And also, we can reduce use of disposable utensils so that we can lower the plastic waste that we generate. And then we can also display a poster around the school, or we can have some poster designing competitions so that we can let the message of carbon to be spread around the school. So maybe I would like to show more about the greenhouse gas emission that I have mentioned before, that why are we using carbon equivalent, and because there are many different greenhouse gas among the atmosphere, but we cannot always compare it one by one, so that we only focus on the few major greenhouse gases, and then we calculate them by multiplying the greenhouse gases with their global warming potential. And the global warming potential that we are referring is to the 5th assessment report standard, the AR5 that I have highlighted here. It is referring to the the global warming potential was developed to allow the comparison between the different gases to CO2, so that when we are calculating it can be noticed that the N2O always have a larger global warming potential than the methane. It is because the N2O may trap more heat over methane comparing to CO2. So that we usually will compare the greenhouse gas emissions when we calculate the carbon footprint. Maybe we can maybe you can try on calculating the scope 2 and scope 3 emission. I will allow 5 minutes of that you can think about the calculations. You can type any question, if any, on the chat box or simply unmute yourself if you have any questions. Okay, maybe allow me to further elaborate on how to do the calculation. As I actually on the take this as an example for the we can note that the school is based on Kowloon, so that we are using the emission factor from the CLP for calculation 0.39 kg CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour. And then we can simply multiply the units, this total electricity consumed, and multiplying by 0.39 to get the greenhouse gas emission by the electricity. And similarly, applying to the town gas, we have 25 units here, and referring to the emission factor, it is 0.588 kilogram CO2e per unit of town gas. So when we multiply it, we can get that the emission by scope 2 is around 193.06 tons of CO2 emitted. And then for the paper use, it is similar. We can plug the amounts from the paper to the equation I list here. That's the inventory at the beginning of the reporting period plus the inventory that you add to the paper during the reporting period, and then deduct the amount by the amount that we recycle or remain at the end of the reporting period, so that we can multiply the amount by emission factor 4.8 kilogram CO2e equivalent per kg. And for the water, we can also plug the 30 meter cube and 200 meter cube to the equation here, so that we can get the final scope 3 greenhouse gas emission at 21.74. And usually when we compare the greenhouse gas emissions with another similar entities like another school or another organization, we usually get the total greenhouse gas emission and divide it by the number of students or number of staffs or the area of the school, so that we can have the greenhouse gas emission per students or per area, and to compare with different school or different area. And here I would like to share some useful link or useful link of the carbon audit that we usually come across. And we have an online benchmarking tools that we can also plug in our data to see the average trend among different similar industry. And I have left some time for you to raise questions. Do you have any questions or inquiry about the sharing today?
Erica.
Hi, Mabel.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So if a school has about 400 students, like the one that you just showed us, so that means that you add up all the carbon emission and then divide by the number of students. So actually, the school is doing quite good. Is that right?
You can compare it using the online benchmarking tool to compare among different schools, like the similar function. And in terms of the if the school, the case that I've shared is having 400 of students, it is doing a very good performance in terms of carbon.
For Principal Joe, I think he would be lovely to hear this news. But of course, they can do it more better too, more improvement.
And is there any questions from the school, from the teachers, or maybe students?
Maybe it would be helpful if you can say something about how the factor come in. Like, is it different from different parts of the world?
Oh, you mean the emission factors from different types of field or different activities? Actually, the emission factors are referring to the guideline that I've shown at the beginning. Let me, yeah, the guideline from the Hong Kong EPD and the EMSD, although it is not a very updated one, it is the latest version, but it definitely needs to be updated as the latest edition is in 2010. But actually they are referring to some international guidelines to extract the emission factors of different activities, like I shown here. We can see that for example, the LPG has a rather large, had a relatively larger emission factor in CO2, but like charcoal, we have a more concern on the methane. So actually different fields have different emission factor according to the standard guidelines. Yeah, can I answer your question, Mabel?
You can just get the factor from the guideline, and the school do not need to calculate or estimate all the factor themselves.
Yeah, they can just simply refer to the guideline, and I will share a Excel template of the calculation on the carbon emission. Yes, you can refer to the third one. The PowerPoint will be shared to the schools, and the third one is a very useful link that we are always using, the carbon audit template Excel.
Very clear.
Yeah, any feedback from the school? Mabel, may I know if the PowerPoint will be shared to the school or to the audience?
We like to share the PowerPoint to the school, and we will upload after your clear up of everything. We will upload to the website as well.
Or maybe I can add my contact in the PowerPoint. So if you have further question or feel too shy to raise question here, you can always feel free to contact me.
The school come across carbon audit. So I think in the future, we'll definitely, I will arrange more workshop for this. And so it's okay this time.
So maybe that's come to the end of my sharing. So thank you for the opportunity. And thanks for participating.
Very useful and informative. We'll arrange more workshop of this kind in the future.